Good morning. This morning's reading is from Luke, the 10th chapter, verses 38 through 42. You can find this on page 946 of your pew Bible if you wish to follow along. Now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village, where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." The word of the Lord. Thank you to you.
Good morning. My name is Susanna Muzzin, for those of you who haven't met me yet, and I am the new small group minister here at Hope. So I'm here to preach to you about 3/4 sermon and about 1/4 sales pitch, and I'll let you know when we get to the sales pitch part. So as I was thinking about Martha and Mary and getting ready for this sermon, I began thinking about a life-changing trip that I took 6 years ago in 2009 to Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. And I began thinking about the meals that I ate there. Now, this trip was sponsored by the Southeast Michigan Synod. We went to visit our sister Lutheran congregations in the Holy Land, and we went to talk to leaders working for peace between Palestinians and Israelis. The old city of Jerusalem really struck me. It was mind-boggling. The twisted warren of streets, the merchants, the press of the crowd, the sound of the call to prayer. Now, at first glance, Jerusalem might seem like a model of tolerance and respect for the other. You can stand in a single intersection, more than one intersection throughout the city, and in just a few minutes you'll see Armenian nuns and Franciscan monks, women in hijab, and men in traditional kaftans and headscarves. You'll see Israeli soldiers in camouflage. You'll see Hasidic Jews who are in high fur hats and silk breeches and long tailcoats. And they're all walking the same streets. They're all sharing the same space. They're living side by side. But if you look more closely, you begin to realize that people are just barely tolerating each other. Because, tolerance is not really the same thing as respect. You realize that the Hasidic Jews never make eye contact with anybody, and that the Muslim women in hijab always keep their heads down, and that the Christians who are walking around are focused on their rosaries or on their chanting. In short, no one looks anyone else in the eye. Next slide, please. So it's as if this sign is everywhere in Jerusalem. And it was really hard for me, Midwestern born, small town raised, good Lutheran girl. I'm used to looking people in the eye and smiling at them and making a connection. You don't do that in the old city of Jerusalem. If we think about it, we know that eye contact can be friendly, but it can also be ominous. It can also be threatening. Think about wild animals. One of the things they say is if you ever meet a bear or a wildcat, you don't make eye contact with that wild animal because they will see that as a threat. And the Holy Land is an area constantly on alert because of the danger of war. The tensions and the troubles are just beneath the surface in the Holy City. People rush past each other without looking at or acknowledging the existence of others. It's all to maintain this very uneasy calm. Now, I did see eye contact in 2 situations. The first was when a merchant was trying to sell me something, and they would try to sell me things. The second, and next slide please, is whenever we had a meal with somebody. Now, you've probably heard that in the Middle East, hospitality is really, really important. Everywhere we went, we were offered tea and juice and food. This was at a school for deaf and blind girls who were learning to make different sorts of crafts. They were desperate for funds, but when we came to visit them, they put out this spread that was unbelievable. They treated us like royalty. We went to visit a family in a refugee camp near Hebron, and even they brought out tea and cookies for us. We went to the Arab Lutheran congregation of Jerusalem, and because of the checkpoints that people have to travel through, it's often hard for them to meet at church. So sometimes they'll have a meeting at a house outside of the city walls, and we went there and they fed us. And when we went to Amman, Jordan, they put out a real feast, and they had food and drink, and we sat and we talked and we laughed. We got to know each other. We even danced. I don't have a picture of that, but it was a lot of fun. No matter how little people had, they shared with us because that's what you do. If you can't make eye contact in the streets because that's too dangerous, you can do it when sitting down around a meal. Next slide. So think about how important meals are. We celebrate with meals, we mourn with meals, we give thanks over meals. To be human means to be hungry and thirsty. And so meals allow us a sacred place to sit and to share and to talk. They allow us to let our guards down and to be vulnerable. So this custom in the Middle East that no guest is left unfed, that no stranger goes away hungry, is so important in keeping the society from war. Next slide. Now, one of our meals included these two gentlemen here. On the left is a Palestinian man whose father had been killed by Israeli soldiers. And on the right is an Israeli man whose daughter had been killed by a Palestinian bomber. And they had met each other over a meal. They had started talking to each other, and now they travel around together to talk about peace. And they say, if we can meet over a meal, and if we can learn to forgive each other and know each other, then anybody can. So meals let us overcome our fear, and they let us overcome our hurt and our anxiety. They let us open ourselves up so that we can look one another in the eye. Next slide, please. So this is really what's at the heart of our story today about Mary and Martha and Jesus. Jesus has come to visit his friends in Bethany, and they need to make sure he feels welcome. And he probably sat on the ground, just as we did in this case, and others sat near him, and they might have had a little one who came around and served drinks to him, just as we were served in Palestine. But Martha's anxious, and don't we all know what that's like to get ready for guests coming over and to fret about that? We need to clean the toilet, and we need to vacuum the dog hair off of the rugs, and we need to Windex the windows and cook our best meal and polish the silver and set out the hors d'oeuvres. We have an entire entertainment and publishing industry set up to show us ways to show off to our guests. We don't set tables anymore, we put up tablescapes. Okay? We don't just make a casserole. We have to use the newest exotic ingredients and try to pair them with the best wines. It can really be exhausting to entertain. So I really get Martha. Okay? I see her pushing her hair out of her face and wiping the sweat from her brow. I see her fretting over whether the lamb is too rare or whether it's going to be overcooked, cutting herself while chopping garlic, all because Jesus is there to dine with them. And our translation says that Martha is worried, and this is where it gets really interesting to look at the Greek, because the Greek words are really stronger than the English words we use. we say that she's worried and distracted. The Greek words really imply that she's a little bit panicky, that the word they use is turbadze, which is the same word we get turbulent from. So she's really beside herself. She's in an uproar. And so you see that the issue is not really about what the two women are doing. Some have used this story to say that, the contemplative life of the nun, that would be Mary, is better than that of a woman who chooses to go out and work in the world. That would be Martha. That's not really what this is about. It's really about where they are directing their attention. So Mary is putting all of her attention on Jesus. Martha is really focusing on impressing other people, on showing off. And so this means that she allows her anxiety and rage to take over. She breaks one of the fundamental rules of hospitality. How many of you knew that look from your mother? Okay, if you got into a fight with your brother when company was over, and do not do that, and you are going to get it after the company has left. You don't fight, you don't quarrel in front of guests. She breaks this rule. She not only quarrels with Mary, she brings Jesus into the quarrel. So focused on making everything perfect that she ignores what's happening right now. I mean, think about it. Jesus is in her house, and she's more focused on having a quarrel with her sister. So the problem isn't Martha wanting to cook and clean. The problem isn't Mary ignoring her duties. The problem is this anxiety that Martha feels. This is what Jesus points out. When we're anxious and when we're worried, when we're exasperated and frantic, we're focusing on ourselves and not on others. And so we can't see each other. We can't see Jesus, even if we are at a meal. So, we've got 3 points here to chew on. First, meals are really important. Jesus tells us they are important. He eats with tax collectors and sinners. He feeds 5,000 people with a few loaves and a few fishes. He dines with Mary and Martha. He tells his disciples to set up the meal for the Passover. He breaks bread and he pours wine for his disciples and for all of us. Next slide. Second, Jesus calls us to gather in community and share with each other. He says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of us. And I saw this so many times in the Middle East. This was a woman named Numa in a place called Taibeh, which is mentioned in the Bible as a place that Jesus came to visit during his wanderings, and we were able to share a meal together and then talk to each other and really get to know each other. We're able to look each other in the eye, and we're able to let go of our anxiety and let Jesus come in among us. Next slide. So third, for the meal to be really effective, we need to let go of anxiety, and we need to focus on what's happening right now. So think of all the times that Jesus tells us that. Martha, Martha, stop worrying. Don't worry about tomorrow. God takes care of even the little birds. Don't worry. Let tomorrow take care of tomorrow. And think of how wonderful it is when we can do this with really good friends over a great meal. So it seems to me that we have a clear directive from Jesus to do 3 things. To eat together, and to be present in the moment, to let go of our anxiety so that we can see each other and see Jesus. Now, we do this every week. We do it right here when we have communion together. And I'm sure a lot of us are going to go home and share a meal with our families together. That's part of our tradition often. But other times it's not always easy, even here at Hope. Pastor Rob has talked about how we have so many new staff members, and we've got new people coming to our congregation. We don't always know each other. The 8:15 people don't always know the 9:30 people, and the 9:30 people don't always know the 11 o'clock people. So it can be hard. to get to know each other very well. So part of my ministry here at Hope is to help facilitate ways that we can gather and get to know each other better. It's really important to do this in order to flourish as a congregation. We really need to build strong ties amongst ourselves. We have a clear pattern for this in all of the meals that Jesus ate and shared, and the reminders that he gave us to be together and work together so that he could be in the midst of us. We have a clear pattern for this in the second chapter of Acts, in fact, in how the early disciples lived with each other. Chapter 2 of Acts says, the followers of Jesus devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. All who believed were together and had all things in common. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and they ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. Next slide, please. Okay, so here comes the sales pitch. We're starting a new small group ministry here at Hope called Dinners for 8. And we invite all of you, all adults, whether you're a longtime member or whether you've just joined or whether you're a visitor, to participate with us in this. And the way it works is this. Once you sign up, we will place you in a group with 8 people. And you can join along with a friend or with a spouse. But other than that, we'll be trying to mix people up as much as possible. We really want people to get to know others that they don't know very well. And groups will gather once a month for 4 months for a meal. And then after 4 months ago, we'll mix people up again and start a new round of dinner groups. Now, it's really important to know, these are not study groups. There's no theological discussion happening here unless people want to get into a theological discussion. These aren't prayer groups. There are times and there are places for that, but these groups are simply to enjoy a meal together and enjoy fellowship together. Now think about the 3 points that I mentioned before, the 3 things that Jesus calls us to remember. First, we need a gathering of people, and so we've got 8 gathering together in this case. Second, we need a meal. The group will eat together. And third, the part that Martha found so hard is letting go of anxiety. And the way we do this is by saying that no one is the host of the meal. It's either a potluck meal or it's a meal that we gather together at a restaurant for, so that everyone is sharing in that. Because really, at these meals, Jesus will be the host. We're gathered in his name, and he will be there with us. So we'll have sign-ups. You can talk to me. Later on, we'll have sign-ups in the narthex. We'll have it up on the website. We'll be getting started in October, so we have some time to get ready for this. We really hope to get as many people involved as possible, and we really invite you to join us together with a meal, to eat and drink and relax in the presence of Jesus so that we can see and listen and know each other. Let us pray. Dear Jesus, you know how we hunger not only for food, but also for friendship and fellowship. You have taught us that in gathering and eating and drinking with each other, we will find you in our midst. Help us remember to let go of anxiety, to realize the value of camaraderie, and to laugh with the joy of your presence. All this we ask in the name of the God who created our world, the God who breathes new life into us, and the God who feeds everyone. Amen.